Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Mimi Goodman. Gaza's health ministry says the official death toll has topped 50,000 as Israel continues to bombard and block Gaza. But it's widely believed the actual death toll is far higher. On Sunday, Israeli forces bombed a surgical unit at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, the largest functioning hospital in Gaza. The attack killed 2 people, including Ismail Bahoum, a member of Hamas's political bureau. Hamas said he was at the hospital for treatment for injuries suffered in an earlier Israeli strike. A 16-year-old boy was also killed in the hospital attack. The American trauma surgeon, Feroz Sidwa, was at Nasser Hospital at the time of the attack and said the teenager killed was his patient.
You know, I've certainly never had a patient injured in an explosion, brought to the hospital, taken care of, doing well, ready to go home, and then blown up in his hospital bed. That's a first. And that should be what we call in medicine a never event. That's not really supposed to happen. I can't emphasize enough, it just doesn't matter who is in the hospital. It's not legal to blow it up. It's not legal to kill people in here. It's not legal to attack people in here. It's not ethical. It's completely crazy.
To see our interviews with Dr. Feroz Sidwa, you can go to democracynow.org. In a separate strike, Israel blew up the Turkish Friendship Hospital, Gaza's only specialized cancer hospital. The hospital had been closed since November 2023 due to Israeli attacks. At one point, Israeli troops had turned the hospital into a military outpost. The Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs condemned the bombing, saying it was, quote, part of Israel's policy aimed at rendering Gaza uninhabitable and forcibly displacing the Palestinian people, unquote. In other news on Gaza, Israel's Security Cabinet has approved forming what it calls a, quote, voluntary immigration bureau in Gaza, as Israel and the United States push for the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. In Turkey, a court has formally arrested opposition leader, the Istanbul mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, days after he was detained on corruption charges. İmamoğlu is President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's biggest rival, seen by many as the best chance of ending Erdogan's long-standing autocratic rule. Following the news, tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets of Istanbul, where they met with pepper spray and tear gas by police. Over 300 people have been arrested in demonstrations in recent days. Ahead of his arrest, Istanbul University revoked İmamoğlu's degree, a move which bars him from running for president. Nonetheless, his Republican People's Party, or CHP, said Ekrem İmamoğlu received overwhelming support during Sunday's election to select a primary candidate, including from millions of voters who are not party members. PHP leader Özgür Özel addressed Sunday's rally in Istanbul.
4 gün içeride tutup
by keeping him in prison for 4 days, sending him to court while Turkey was going to the polls for him, and sending him to prison while Turkey was electing him, Erdogan defied not only him, but millions, and attempted to stage a coup.
Meanwhile, X, the social media platform owned by Elon Musk, has suspended a number of accounts belonging to opposition activists and academics in Turkey. Education Secretary Linda McMahon said Columbia University is on track to regain $400 million in federal funding after the Ivy League institution yielded to the Trump administration's demands Friday. Those include banning face masks on campus, hiring 36 new security officers with greater power to arrest and crack down on students, and appointing a senior vice provost to oversee the departments of Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African Studies and the Center for Palestine Studies. Students say they will continue to fight for Palestinian rights and for Columbia to divest from Israel. Free speech experts are sounding the alarm. This is Donna Lieberman, Executive Director of the New York Civil Liberties Union.
Unfortunately, it appears that Columbia has capitulated to the bullying of the Trump administration and ceded significant control over academic decisions, like a couple of departments, admissions, discipline, to the Trump administration in return for the Trump administration backing off from its threat to cut off $400 million in grants that have absolutely nothing to do with claims of anti-Semitism or failure to deal with it.
Columbia University students are returning to classes today after spring break. We'll have more on this story later in the broadcast. We'll speak with former Columbia Law School professor Catherine Franke. On Friday night, President Trump issued a memo directing the Attorney General Pam Bondi and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to punish law firms and lawyers who file what the administration views as frivolous or unreasonable lawsuits against the federal government. The memo is widely seen as a way to target immigration lawyers. Former Justice Department official Vanita Gupta said the memo, quote, attacks the very foundations of our legal system by threatening and intimidating litigants who aim to hold our government accountable to the law and the Constitution, she said. Meanwhile, a court battle continues over Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act to transfer over 130 Venezuelan men from the United States to an El Salvadoran supermax prison after they were accused of being gang members. An appeals court will hear oral arguments today on the case. On Friday, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg called Trump's use of the law to be incredibly troublesome and problematic. The Trump administration's appealing Boasberg's decision to halt flights under the Alien Enemies Act. The Trump administration's announced plans to revoke temporary immigration protections for more than 530,000 people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela that were granted under a Biden-era humanitarian parole initiative known as CHNV. In other immigration news, the Washington Post is reporting the IRS is close to agreeing to a deal to give addresses and other personal information about suspected undocumented immigrants to the Department of Homeland Security. One former IRS official told the Post, quote, it's a complete betrayal of 30 years of the government telling immigrants to file their taxes. In other related news, DHS has shut down 3 internal watchdog agencies that advocated for immigrants, including the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. A federal judge Friday blocked Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, from deporting Jeanette Vizqueta, a well-known immigrant rights activist, mother of 4, who was detained in Denver last Monday. U.S. Judge Nina Wang's order also prevents federal authorities from transferring Vizqueta out of Colorado and gave the government a deadline of today to demonstrate why Jeanette Vizqueta should not be released. The head of the U.S. Social Security Administration threatened Friday to shut down the agency, then backed down from the threat. Trump's head of Social Security, Leland Dudek, made the initial threat after a federal judge blocked Elon Musk's Doge from accessing Social Security records, which the judge likened to a fishing expedition. Meanwhile, Trump's Commerce Secretary, the billionaire Howard Lutnick, has sparked outrage after suggesting only fraudsters would complain if Social Security checks didn't go out on time.
Social Security didn't send out their checks this month. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain. She just wouldn't. She'd think something got messed up, and she'll get it next month.
Yeah.
A fraudster always makes the loudest noise, screaming, yelling, and complaining.
Elon Musk visited the Pentagon Friday for a high-level meeting with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and others. The New York Times had reported Musk was scheduled to receive a briefing on top-secret U.S. plans for a potential war with China. But the briefing was canceled after it was reported in the press. Musk threatened to go after whoever leaked what he called maliciously false information to the New York Times. Musk has close business ties with China, which is Tesla's second largest market. China is also the home of Tesla's largest factory. Elon Musk's Political Action Committee is offering voters in Wisconsin $100 to sign a petition opposing what he calls activist judges ahead of Wisconsin's Supreme Court election on April 1st. Two Musk-backed groups have spent over $20 million on the race to support Republican Brad Schimmel over Democrat Susan Crawford. The race will decide control of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. U.S. and Russian officials are holding talks in Saudi Arabia today, a day after the U.S. held negotiations with Ukraine. The talks are focused in part on a proposed pause to attacks on energy facilities between Russia and Ukraine, as well as securing a possible maritime ceasefire in the Black Sea. On Sunday, a Russian drone attack killed 7 people, including a 5-year-old child, in Kyiv. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drone attacks killed 2 people in Russia. Sudan's military has retaken control over most of central Khartoum over the weekend after soldiers seized the presidential palace in the capital Friday. By Sunday, the Sudanese army also captured the central bank and the headquarters of the National Intelligence Service. Analysts say it could be a major turning point in the devastating civil war between Sudanese forces and the Rapid Support Forces, which is nearing the 2-year mark and has created the world's largest humanitarian disaster. South African Ambassador Ebrahim Rasool returned home to a hero's welcome Sunday after being expelled from Washington. Secretary of State Marco Rubio recently declared Rasool to be persona non grata in the latest move taken by the Trump administration against South Africa. Speaking in Cape Town Sunday, Rasool criticized the Trump administration for cutting off aid to South Africa.
We have tried to engage. We have been met with executive orders that cut our aid, cut PEPFAR, and now we sit with the idea that millions could be reinfected with HIV and AIDS. The research for the vaccine may not be one that could be completed. Those are the dangerous things that are happening and why we must mend our relationship or sit out the next 4 years.
South African Ambassador Rasool has also said South Africa will resist pressure from the U.S. and other nations to drop its genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. South Korea's Constitutional Court has dismissed the impeachment of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo Monday, reinstating him as acting president. Han took on the interim presidency after Yoon Suk-yeol was suspended over a short-lived declaration of martial law in December. Han's been accused of complicity in the failed martial law attempt and of refusing to appoint judges to the Constitutional Court. A ruling on Yoon's fate is expected soon. Mass protests have taken place over Seoul's streets amidst the deepening political turmoil. Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, called on Sunday for snap federal elections to be held April 28th.
We are facing the most significant crisis of our lifetimes because of President Trump's unjustified trade actions and his threats to our sovereignty. Our response must be to build a strong economy and a more secure Canada. President Trump claims that Canada isn't a real country. He wants to break us so America can own us. We will not let that happen.
Carney, a former central banker with little political experience, is hoping to consolidate his Liberal Party's power after the popularity of the opposition Conservative Party soared during his predecessor, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's final months in power. Greenland's prime minister has expressed outrage over what he called the Trump administration's highly aggressive plan to send Second Lady Usha Vance, National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, and Energy Secretary Chris Wright to Greenland this week. Over the past 2 months, President Trump has repeatedly threatened to take control of Greenland, quote, one way or another. And on Friday, an estimated 34,000 people gathered in Denver, Colorado for a massive rally to hear Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont and Congressmember Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York as part of their Fighting Oligarchy tour. It was the largest rally of either of their political careers.
We will not allow America to become an oligarchy. This nation was built by working people. And we're not going to let a handful of billionaires run the government.
Power and corruption is taking over this country like never before. And we are here, most importantly, because we know that a better world is possible.
AOC and Senator Sanders. Other speakers at the rally included Alvaro Bedoya, the federal trade commissioner who was fired by Trump last week and is suing for his reinstatement. Those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.